What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and refined review of Dagr, Seiros, Duo Micaiah, Annette, Fallen Male Corrin, Gangrel, and Midori. Dagr gets a good weapon refine to her skin faxi, and this did have +3 speed built in, and also the innate Pathfinder, and Spectrum Immunity was also something that she had before, and now with this weapon refine she's able to give the Pathfinder status to her support partner, just like Wind Tribe Dagr. But the thing is that this Dagr is infantry, so she can run counter control, which is really valuable for something like Summoner Duels. And then she can get +5 to all of her stats in the combat, and also inflict -4 attack speed and defense debuff on the foe in the combat. She also gets the in-combat panic in her weapon refine, and she gets another way of doing true damage with 10% of her attack. And then finally she has got 40% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits. So this weapon refine is really good for Summoner Duels, but when it comes to Aether Raids offense, I kind of wish that she got -1 special cooldown and special charges so that she could function as a better Gale Force unit. Unfortunately, she doesn't really get too much for doing that, but still, at least she's able to give out better support by having the Pathfinder status on her support partner. So that way you can have much better hit and run Gale Force teams. And she does have a remix to her Sun Twin Wing, so it debuffs the foe for -5 attack speed and defense, and then it does have null follow-up built in, and now she can get true damage based on 20% of her speed, and also pierces through the damage reduction by 50%. So it's kind of like physical null follow-up, but a bit better because of having that true damage. So she's got two sources of true damage, 20% on her speed and then 10% on her attack. So this is going to be helping her damage output a lot, especially when she's going to be running Gale Force and not a damaging special. So overall, Dagr gets a pretty good weapon refine, and she's going to be a lot more useful in Summoner Duels as, because you could run her with Brave Crom to copy that Pathfinder status, or even run her with Nabata Grin and a bunch of Cavaliers and just ignore the Trench Tiles and also get the benefit out of the Pathfinder status. So I think we're going to be seeing her quite a lot there. And if you do have her at +10 as part of your Mythic core, then she's at least going to be giving you support and functioning as a Mythic unit at the same time, compared to Wind Tribe Dagr if you did want the Pathfinder status. A lot of times she's not going to be useful too much on a Gale Force team, especially when they already have good mobility. So I hope that we can get some kind of Wings of Mercy, Sacred Seal, or a Tune skill, because that would be really beneficial for Dagr in Aether Raids offense. Dagr gets attack speed Hexblade as the remix skill, so make sure to learn that. And even though she has got the Hexblade skill, she doesn't really debuff the enemy's resistance, which is a bit annoying. So she does come with even Tempest, and you can just run the Odd Tempest Sacred Seal as part of a super budget build, and then you can run Moonbow as her special. She doesn't really get -1 special cooldown, so having a low cooldown special does help, but even a higher cooldown special like Gale Force is going to be amazing for Aether Raids offense. And because she has got Spectrum Unity built in her weapon, you can run attack speed Unity so that you can have even harder stat swing, and this is going to be helping you against any kind of Bright Shrine debuffs or panic from Yoon. So you can run this and run Time Pulse 4 so that you can have a 4 cooldown Gale Force, and then you can get the special charges out of Flashing Blade Sacred Seal. So Time Pulse 4 is basically going to be the best skill for Dagr in Aether Raids offense, because she lacks that -1 special cooldown, and having a lower cooldown Gale Force is extremely valuable. You can also run Flash Barrow from the Divine Codes 5 in her slotty, so this allows you to stack up even more attack and speed by running something like Attack Speed Ideal. So again, Gale Force is something you want to run on her so that she can just clean up the enemy team or even participate in hit and run Gale Force. You can also use her in Summoner Duels with Counter Control, and she can definitely try and frontline because of her stat swing and also the in-combat panic that she gets. So she can run Drawback and pretty much position herself better. She's not going to be having Canto 1 of Wind Tribe Dagr, but still she can run Odd Tempest so that she can get that extra movement on turn 1. So it is going to be helping you with your openers in Summoner Duels. And then finally, when you gotta run Wings of Mercy on your Gale Force team, you gotta do it. So you can run that and have Gale Force with Emblem Marth, and also run Time Pulse 4. With Asuka, she's going to be having a 2 cooldown Gale Force, which she's going to be able to get from a single tap by using Flash Barrow. Kind of wish that she got some kind of Null Guard in her weapon, which would have helped her quite a lot in Gale Forcing, but this is pretty much her weapon refine, and you gotta make use of it if you're going to be using her as your core Mythic. Duo Micaiah is my favorite refine of this patch, and she gets a pretty good weapon refine to her Joyful Vows. So this did give her +3 attack and also had effective damage against armors and cavaliers, which is the trademark of Micaiah. And then she gets +11 attack and resistance in combat. And she also has a better Spice Dagger effect, or even better Broadleaf Fan effect, you can say. The reason why I say it's better is because even if the foe has got any kind of debuff neutralization, you're still going to be able to take the debuffs out of their allies into space of them. So it is going to be helping you get extra attack in the combat. And then she gets guaranteed follow-up attack and follow-up denial, which is helpful as a slow unit. And taking inspiration from Yoon, she gets an Omni Chill, -7 debuffs, and also Chilled Sabotage debuff. So similar to Chaos Name Plus, she's going to be able to spread the debuffs on the enemies, and she is going to be able to also get the Sabotage effect on them instead of getting the Panic effect. So this is going to be helping her just stat stack and function as a really good nuke. And she also gets 50% damage reduction, which is really useful on a nuke who's a flyer and doesn't really have access to a lot of the skills. And she is a slow flyer, so a lot of times she is going to be depending on her one-shots, and this kind of damage reduction piercing is going to be helping you with that. She does have a duo skill, which is going to be giving you and the allies in 3 columns the dominant status, which is basically giving you true damage based on the debuffs that you've got on the foe. And she can also debuff the foes in 3 columns for -7 defense and resistance. And this weapon refine goes well with her duo skill because you're already able to debuff the enemies for quite a lot and also get the sabotage status on them. So getting the true damage out of dominance is not really going to be all that hard. And even if Micaiah is not going to be attacking, at least she's going to be providing the support to your team with the sabotage status and her chill debuffs. So this makes Duo Micaiah into a really good nuke and a better unit actually, because Yoon is lacking the damage reduction piercing which Micaiah has got, and there are a lot more units that can spread the panic status compared to the units that can spread the sabotage status. So in that way, she's able to do it and also nuke with the better Spice Dagr effect in her weapon. If you're going to be running her on a super budget, then you don't really need to change too much from her base kit. You can just run Glimmer and Attack Resistance Catch as a Sacred Seal. And if you're going to be investing a bit more into her, then you can run Catch 4. And you can also run Fortress in her slot B because ranged flyers don't really have a lot of options. And then you can run Rain in her slot C. But if you're going to be giving her some premium skills, then you can run her with Flared Mirror and also Occultist Strike for the pre-combat damage. So this way you can set up the Flame Terrain, and then you can run Soaring Guidance or Guidance 4 for enabling the warping on your team. And this is going to be improving the mobility of her team, and she can hit really hard because of the pre-combat damage and all of the things that her Refine has got. You can also run her with Deadly Miasma if you have got an attuned Ivy, and she can certainly use Attack Resistance Fortress and also make use of Soaring Echo as the attuned skill. From the Divine Codes you can get Attack Resistance Unity, which is going to be a decent skill, and it is going to be having good synergy with Aerobatics as a Sacred Seal, so this can help you get around. And the Tier 4 Fortress skill at least gives you minimum Canto 1, so this does allow you to retreat a lot better. And finally, you can also use her with the Ploy skill and just stack up Double Still Water. Her resistance is not the highest by the modern standards, so that's why you can run Double Still Water, and you can get some pre-combat damage with Occultist Strike, and you're gonna be able to ploy the enemies and also get the exposure status on them, which does give you better one-shot potential. Seiros also gets a Refine in Remix, and she gets a Refine to Aurora Breath, so it did give her +3 attack, and now she can get the guaranteed follow-up attack in both phases. And with the weapon Refine, she's able to get +10 attack, defense, and resistance in the combat. And just like her guaranteed follow-up attack, she also gets follow-up denial in both phases. So it's a nice upgrade from her older weapon, and now she can have the guard effect on the foe in the combat. And with the weapon Refine, she gets minus in special cooldown, which I really wish Dagr also got. And then she can get true damage based on 15% of her resistance, only on her first attack though. And then she's got Dragon Wall built in this weapon, so she's going to be stacking the Dragon Wall with this weapon, and then finally she can heal up 7 HP after the combat. So overall this is a decent Refine and gives her a lot of the things which modern units have nowadays, like minus in special cooldown, healing and everything. So it does help her as a slower dragon, and I think the best part of her Refine and Remix is definitely her Remix, which allows her to function as a much better Aether Raids defense unit. So Wings of Light Plus does give you the +X to all of your stats, and this is going to be dependent on the turn count +3, so this can go up to max 8, and you also get 30% damage reduction on the mythic units on your teams. Make sure that you have got 3 or less mythics. You can only run 6 Dumas and just have them all get the damage reduction and these stats. And to the allies in 3 rows and 3 columns, centered on her, she also gives them +4 to all of their stats and also special cooldown charge +1 on both enemies' attacks and your own attacks. So this is going to be helping you to trigger your specials a lot more easily, and this kind of long range support is really good. And then on herself, she can get +5 to all of her stats, also the special cooldown charge +1 per attack and 30% damage reduction. So she's going to be stacking a lot of damage reduction, which does help against the partial damage reduction piercing, like from magical null follow-up and physical null follow-up. But in the case of full damage reduction piercing, none of this damage reduction is going to be helping her. So at least now she's able to give a bit more support in Aether Raids defense, which is of course needed out of the Aether Raids defense mythic unit. And I kind of wish that she got more support in her weapon refine, but Wings of Light Plus is going to be a nice support that she can provide to her mythic allies and to also the regular allies. But when it comes to her own combat, she's not going to be standing out too much when it comes to Aether Raids defense. She's definitely not a ranged nuke or someone like Mirabilis who can support your team well. So unfortunately, even after this weapon refine, her combat is going to be a bit lackluster for Aether Raids defense. But if you do use her outside of Aether Raids, then she can definitely function with this weapon refine, and she does get attack resistance scowl as her remix skill. So make sure to learn this because it is going to be helping her quite a lot in tanking. And now with the -1 special cooldown and these special charges, she's able to retaliate back with icebergs that do a lot of damage. You can also try and use her in Aether Raids defense, and the only difference for Aether Raids defense builds is that you don't really need to run distant counter dragon sacred seal, and you can just run another sacred seal that can stack up attack and resistance. So she could just be used as a Wings of Mercy unit because she doesn't really have the mobility of a cavalier or a flyer, so it can help you at the very least. And if you're trying to get some damage reduction piercing yourself, then you can run Special Spiral 4, and with Glacies, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage on retaliation. And this does go well with her weapon refine because she only gets the true damage on her first hit. So Glacies is going to be doing a lot of damage with her resistance, and this way you completely pierce the damage reduction of the enemy. You can also run her with Counter Roar 4, and this is also an option to get the damage reflection and also some healing, which is going to be stacking with her weapon. So it is something you can get out of Divine Codes, but honestly I would say that this is going to be the best max investment build on her. She does have the resistance to make use of Dragon's Roar of Legendary Male, and this is going to be giving you that unpierceable damage reduction, which is so valuable nowadays. And because she already gets the guard effect out of her weapon, you can still run the scout skill, and you can run Tempo 4 in her slot B so that you can get the half damage reduction, and you also get the null guard, so this way you can always retaliate back with Dragon's Roar. And the defensive tempo effect is useful with the guard effect of her weapon because the enemy is not charging their special against her unless they have null guard themselves. Annette gets a refine to her crusher, and this should give her +3 attack and also the adaptive damage, and she could give +1 movement after rallying an ally. And as long as they were not a ranged cavalier, they would get +1 movement. So now not only she can give the rally movement to her ally, but also get another action herself. So this is definitely the bare minimum because she would be expending her player phase action in rallying an ally, and this does allow her to have another action in the player phase. So having another action as a rally bot is good, and then she gets +8 to all of her stats in the combat, and also gets 40% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits. And then she has got basically a better tier 4 seal skill that can debuff the foe's speed, defense, and resistance for -6. And I say better tier 4 seal skill because you're going to be ignoring any kind of debuff neutralization effect of the enemy. So it is going to be helping you get the debuffs and also debuff the enemy with the visible debuffs if they don't already have it. And Rue skills are pretty much going to be the bread and butter of Annette, and now we can easily have them with Divine Codes 5. And then with this weapon refine, she's able to get the guaranteed follow-up attack. And then if the enemy has got any kind of debuff to their speed, defense, and resistance, then she can get true damage based on 15% of her attack. So overall, this is a decent refine, and the extraction definitely helps Annette. But I wish that she had some kind of extra movement herself because she is going to be needing that extra movement, and that would have made her a lot better as a melee nuke, which is the role that she's going to be doing alongside being a rally bot. And like I said before, Divine Codes 5 does give us the Ruse Force skill, so that is definitely something you should be running. And you can also run her with Infantry Null Follow-Up 4, so this way she can get the Order status herself and also the Null Follow-Up status. And she's also able to give the Null Follow-Up status to the other allies, so it is useful as a support, and it also improves the mobility of Annette, which she definitely needs because she doesn't really get the +1 movement herself. And Attack Speed Unity is something that you can run in the slot A, and it does have good synergy with the Order status that she can get from her slot C. And Glimmer is going to be the special that you can run because she's going to be targeting the resistance of the enemy, so that's why you can run Glimmer over Moonbow, and then you can just run the Feint skill so that you can have the attack debuff on the enemies as well. You can also try and make her as a melee nuke with No Quarter and Emblem Marth. So it is going to be a 2 cooldown No Quarter that she can easily trigger in a single round of combat, and you can also feed her Ascended Fur so that she can get the Finish 4 skill and get the true damage out of it and also the healing. And Physical Null Follow-Up is definitely something she can make use of because of her speed, and the damage reduction piercing is definitely going to be helpful in the melee combat. And Attack Speed Oath 4 again gives her the better mobility, which does help you as a rally bot and also as an offensive unit. You can also run her with Speed Defense Tempo 4, and this is going to be helping you not get stopped by the guard effects of the enemies. Again, No Quarter is going to be the option that you can run, and Infantry Null Follow-Up 4 is a fantastic option on Annette that you can definitely get from Divine Codes 5. She can also use Gambit with her Weapon Refine because she doesn't really have -1 special cooldown, but I do appreciate having No Quarter as a damage reduction piercing special on Annette, and on the times when you're not going to be triggering the special, you're still going to be able to pierce to the damage reduction a bit with Physical Null Follow-Up or Tier 4 Tempo skill. Fallen Male Corrin gets a Refine to his Brutal Breath, and this did give him +3 speed and also inflict the guard effect on the foe in the combat. With the Weapon Refine, he's able to get +4 to all of his stats in the combat, and now he's able to get additional stats in the combat depending on number of adjacent allies multiplied by 2 and then subtracted from 11. So max, if he has got no adjacent ally, he's going to be able to get +11 to all of his stats, which is pretty good for just stat stacking, and then he can heal up 7 HP after the combat. And at sort of turn, if the adjacent allies is less than 2 or 2, then he's able to get +6 attack and speed visible buff, and also the dot status, and also the dull all foes status. So this is something that we have seen before with Veluria and also with Valentine Lucina. So ignoring the visible buffs of the enemies does help in tanking, and now he doesn't have to run Speed Smoke 4 to get the dot status, and you don't even have to use him with Attune Peony for getting that. So it does help, and it is going to be opening up the options for him. And finally, he's able to get true damage based on 20% of his speed, which is going to be helping him with his damage output. So he does get a lot of the things that you'd want on a tank. He's just missing the flat damage reduction and Scowl effect. You can run him with Veil so that you can get the Drive Scowl effect. So that is something you could do in Aether Raids offense. And his Weapon Refine doesn't really make it too hard for you to get the max things out of it, because you just need to not have any kind of adjacent ally, and he's going to be getting +15 to all of his stats. So if you're going to be building him up with Divine Codes, then you can run Counter 4 in his slot base so that he can have the damage reflection, and you can also run Attack Speed Finish so that he can get the in-combat healing. So you get a lot of healing with this kind of build because you've got 14 post-combat healing, and you also have the in-combat healing, and Pulse Smoke is actually pretty decent because of the guard effect in his weapon. So it is going to be making it harder for the enemies to use their specials. And you can also run Distant Counter Dragon Sacred Seal on him because he does get more resistance than before. And I do think that the best slot B skill for him is not Counter 4, but instead it is Magical Null Follow-Up, because the damage reduction piercing is something that a lot of tanks need nowadays. So you can run that and run him with Bonfire and Time Pulse 4 with Emblem Marth. So this way he can retaliate back with bonfires that are going to be doing a lot of damage, and Finish is still a good skill that you can run on him so that you can get the healing and the true damage. And then finally, if you're going to be using him in Aether Raids offense, then you could use him with Veil and also just Omni Tank with him by the use of Null Counter Disrupt, so that you don't really get fire swept by many of the Aether Raids defense threats. So Panic Smoke 4 is going to be the Omni Tanking Slotsy skill you can run, and Freyr is not going to be able to cleanse the Panic status which you can do with the skill because it is in middle of the turn. So it is going to be giving you the foe penalty doubler status. Unfortunately, dragon units can only get the Prime 4 skill, which would have been a neat thing on him because he can already give himself the 2 status effects, but attack speed finish 4 is basically the main slotty skill you can run on him. Midori gets a surprisingly good weapon refine for a 5-star locked unit that didn't really have a preferred weapon before, so Lucky Bow does give her +8 to all of her stats, and she has got the Spendthrift Bow effect built in her weapon, so she can get additional +7 attack in the combat and debuff the enemy's attack by -7. But unfortunately, it is going to be coming with the drawback of Spendthrift Bow, which I don't really think we really needed in 2024. So it is going to be having the reverse spiral effect built in. So she's going to be able to get +2 special cooldown. So you pretty much want to run a low cooldown special that you can easily trigger in the combat. And then she can get true damage based on 15% of her attack. And she also gets flat damage reduction based on 15% of her attack as well. So flat damage reduction is good because it's unpierceable, and it's very valuable because you cannot really easily get it compared to the pierceable damage reduction. And then with her weapon refine, she's able to have the recovery cleansing to cleanse any kind of penalty on herself and the allies in 2 spaces. And she also heals herself up and the allies for 10 HP. So this is the recovery cleansing that we have seen before on Sarah and Safi. This is not like the cleansing of Freyr, and it is a pretty good niche and can also help you in something like Seer Snare. So you could just run her as a pseudo healer, and she also cleanses any kind of penalty. And then finally, she's able to get the guaranteed follow-up attack and also get the follow-up denial, which does help her with her low speed. She does have 41 base attack, so that is the super boon you want to be picking for getting the true damage and the flat damage reduction out of this weapon refine. So I do like the recovery aspect of her weapon refine because it allows her to have this kind of niche which no other bow unit has got. And it's also a reference to Midori using medicines and also being an apothecary. So if you're going to be using her with the Divine Code fodder, then you can run her with Remote Sturdy, and getting the pierceable damage reduction through Remote Sturdy is going to be helping you have a lot more bulk with the flat damage reduction of Lucky Bow. And you want to use Time Pulse so that you can have a 2 cooldown Deadeye, because she does have that drawback in her weapon, and you can run lull attack defense in her slot B so that you can completely ignore any kind of visible buff to the enemy's attack, which is going to be helping you function as a bulky archer. You can definitely try and upgrade Close Foil to attack defense prime 4, and there are not too many skills that an archer can get for the damage reduction, so Guard 4 is one of those skills that he can run. So not only Guard is helpful as a slow unit, but it is going to be providing you with the pierceable damage reduction, which is going to be taken into the account first, and then the flat damage reduction is going to be getting applied. You can also run attack speed pledge so that you can retaliate back with Deadeye because of use of Emblem Marth. So you want to run pledge so that you can get the special charge status, and that also helps you with the triggering of the close counter effect of the prime skill. Attack Oath Echo is also something you can run as a attune skill, and you can also use her in Aether Raids defense for its recovery effect, and you can definitely try and run an expensive build with Earth Fire boost giving her the guard effect, and speed defense tempo giving you the damage reduction piercing and the null guard. And Infantry Pelts 4 is something that she can run because of her high HP, and this also gives her a 2 cooldown Deadeye. Gangrel gets a refine to his 11 dagger, and it did give him +3 resistance, and it also gave him true damage based on 20% of his resistance. And now at start of turn, he can inflict on the nearest foes in 5 spaces and the foes in 2 spaces of them with the -7 speed and resistance debuff, and also the guard status, which is something that he's going to be doubling down with his refine. He can now get +8 to all of these stats in the combat, and also gets adaptive damage, which is really apt for the 11 dagger. And now he can get the sabotage effect on the foe in the combat, so it is basically going to be checking the highest penalty on each stat on target and foes in 2 spaces of the target, and then it is going to be taking that. And he also gets 30% damage reduction on foes first attack. So I'm not really too impressed by this weapon refine, but still, at least he doesn't have to run Arcane Void, and the debuffing that he does from his weapon is definitely the thing which I like the most. So he could be used with attack speed finish 4 and physical null follow up from the divine codes, and attack speed oath is something you can run. Unfortunately, he's not able to run magical null follow up, so that sucks a bit with his adaptive damage. So he can get the damage reduction piercing and also the null follow up effect, which is helpful. And you can also use him with Panic Smoke 4 doubling down on the debuffs that he can do. So you can use Flash Barrow so that you can get the special charges, and Tempo 4 is going to be giving you that Null Guard and also the damage reduction piercing, which does help when you're not going to be triggering lethality. So it could be run with Fleeting Echo as is a tune skill. So because of these special charges and Null Guard, he's going to be able to trigger lethality a lot more easily. You can click the link on his screen right now to see my breakdown on Divine Codes 5, which we also got in this update. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as minus and special cooldown on Dagr's Weapon Refine. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.